Chapter 1. Imagine a grave that breathes. 1970, the Soviet Union builds a lunar fortress. They called it Zvezda. But it was a pressurized death trap. High above, the moon waited for its masters. Inside Moscow, engineers were playing God. They needed a system to sustain life. Instead, they built a chemical nightmare. One mistake meant instant incineration. No rescue missions. No funeral. Just cold, silent vacuum. Your heart beats faster. The air tastes like rusted metal. You are 380,000 kilometers from home. The hatch locks forever. Gravity is a distant memory now. Welcome to the edge of human sanity. This wasn't a mission. It was a sentence. Can you hear the oxygen pumps? They sound like a dying man's gasp. The red moon is hungry tonight. It demands a blood sacrifice. Every second is a gamble. Every breath is recycled sweat. The void is watching you. Chapter 2. Total secrecy was the only law. Projects like this didn't exist on paper. Names were erased from history books. High-ranking generals whispered in dark corridors. Why build a base on a dead rock? Was it science? Or was it a weapon? The Americans saw nothing. The satellites were blind. Deep in the Russian permafrost, simulators groaned. Men lived in titanium boxes for months. They forgot the color of the sun. Isolation creates monsters. The Soviet lunar dream was a ghost. Thousands worked on it. None could speak its name. If you leaked a secret, you vanished. The Kremlin demanded a permanent presence. A red flag on a gray world. But secrets have a heavy price. The blueprints were soaked in fear. The silence was louder than any explosion. Who were these faceless astronauts? Where are their records now? The archives remain locked. Chapter 3. The moon is a relentless killer. It hates biological life. No atmosphere. No protection. Lethal cosmic rays burn through skin. To survive, you need a mechanical miracle. The Zvezda life support was that miracle. It was a complex web of pipes. Corrosive chemicals flowed like dark blood. Potassium superoxide was the hidden heart. It swallowed poison and gave back air. But this chemical is unstable. Add 1 drop of oil. It explodes with the force of TNT. You are living inside a bomb. The walls are thin as paper. Outside, the temperature swings are brutal. Boiling heat. Then freezing darkness. The machinery never sleeps. It hums with a low, vibrating frequency. It gets inside your skull. You start hearing voices in the static. The machine is your only friend. And it is very temperamental. Chapter 4. Washington was terrified. Strange signals were bouncing off the moon. Not English. Not Apollo. The CIA scrambled for answers. They saw massive Soviet rockets on pads. The N-1 was a giant. It carried the weight of an empire. Something was moving in the lunar shadows. Ghostly structures appeared in grainy photos. Was the USSR already there? Had they built a hidden colony? The space race was a lie. The real war was in the dark. Intelligence reports mentioned DLB Zvezda, a self-sustaining city for Soviet soldiers. It had nuclear reactors. It had automated turrets. It was a castle in the stars. But the shadows hide the truth. The signals were screams of hardware. The Soviet lunar base was dying. Or perhaps it was waiting. Watching the Earth with cold eyes. The nightmare was just beginning. Chapter 5. The heart of Zvezda was pure poison. Potassium superoxide pellets filled the canisters. They react with breath to create oxygen. But it is a violent chemical marriage. Add a single drop of hydraulic oil. The reaction is an instant white-hot fire. It burns through steel in seconds. Inside the base, you are trapped. Fire eats the oxygen you need. You are choking in a furnace. The walls become a searing metal skin. There is no water to douse it. Water makes the chemical fire explode. It is a perfect, inescapable trap. The Soviet engineers knew the risks. They signed the death warrants anyway. Science demanded a heavy blood price. The machine was alive and hungry. It breathed because you breathed. If you stopped, it died too. But it would kill you first. Chapter 6. Imagine the smell inside that lunar tomb. It wasn't clean. It wasn't fresh. It was a thick, metallic stench. Ozone and recycled human sweat. The air scrubbers groaned under the pressure. Carbon dioxide is a silent assassin. If the sensors fail, you drift off. A permanent sleep in a gray world. Your head throbbed with every pump cycle. The vibration traveled through your boots. It shook your very bones at night. You could never find true silence. Only the hum of the life support. It sounded like a giant mechanical insect. It watched your every move. Every exhale was a technical calculation. Your life depended on a rusted valve. Can you trust a machine from 1970? Your lungs are the only filter left. The air is heavy and wet. Chapter 7. Water was more precious than gold. Every liquid was reclaimed and filtered. Your own urine became your morning tea. The filters were basic and harsh. The water tasted like copper and chemicals. It left a film on your tongue. You were drinking the same gallon forever. The cycle was a closed, disgusting loop. If a filter clogged, you died thirsty. Hygiene was a luxury for the earth. On the moon, you lived in filth. Bacteria loved the warm, damp pipes. Microscopic monsters evolved in the dark. They ate the rubber seals. They rotted the electrical wiring. The base was slowly digesting itself. You were just a passenger. A biological component in a failing system. The Zvezda was a living organism. And it was getting very sick. Chapter 8. The Soviets feared a lunar invasion. They didn't just build a base. They built a fortress with teeth. Automated defense systems guarded the airlocks. Sensors scanned for any unauthorized movement. But the software was primitive and paranoid. If the pressure dropped, it panicked. It would seal the inner doors instantly. Even if your comrade was halfway through. The titanium jaws would snap shut. Logic was replaced by cold algorithms. The mission was more important than men. The computer didn't feel pity or fear. It only saw pressure and oxygen levels. If you were a leak, you were gone. You were a variable in an equation. A expendable piece of Soviet hardware. The stars are indifferent to screams. And so was the Zvezda. Chapter 9. The temperature control was a nuclear nightmare. On the moon, the sun is a furnace. Then the shadow is a frozen grave. The Zvezda used a sprawling radiator network. It pumped liquid ammonia through external silver fins. This was the base's cooling heartbeat. But ammonia is a silent, invisible killer. One microscopic crack in the internal heat exchanger. The base fills with a burning, acrid mist. It melts your lungs in 3 breaths. The Soviet design was notoriously fragile here. They used thin titanium pipes to save weight. Weight was more important than human safety. Every expansion and contraction stressed the welds. You could hear the metal groaning at night. It sounded like a giant, dying whale. The nuclear reactor hummed in the basement. It bled excess heat into the living quarters. You slept in a sweat-soaked sleeping bag. The air was always too thin. Or too hot. or too cold. There was no middle ground here. You lived on the edge of a meltdown. The alarms were calibrated to stay silent. Panic was considered a form of treason. You just watched the pressure gauges shake. The needle flickered near the red zone. You prayed to a god you renounced. The machine was your only true master. It demanded total, blind obedience to physics. If the cooling failed, you boiled. There was no third option available. Chapter 10. In 1972, the ground simulators became coffins. A secret test went horizontally wrong. 3 men were sealed inside the Zvezda 1 module. They were testing the long-term oxygen scrubbers. Suddenly, a spark ignited the potassium superoxide. The reaction was a chemical whiteout. The interior became a sun of pure fire. The automated systems did exactly their job. They sensed the pressure spike from heat. They slammed the heavy titanium airlocks shut. The men inside were screaming for mercy. But the protocol was absolute and cold. Protect the facility at all costs. The technicians outside watched through thick glass. They saw their friends turn into shadows. They couldn't override the mechanical safety locks. The fire didn't need external oxygen. It fed on the chemicals in the walls. In 4 minutes, it was over. Only carbon and melted steel remained inside. Moscow wiped the records that same night. The families were told it was a plane. No medals were given for this death. The Zvezda demanded silence from the living. The charred prototype was buried in concrete. It remains under a Russian forest today. A lesson in engineering written in ash. The system worked perfectly for the machine. It failed the humans with surgical precision. Chapter 11. What if a Soviet officer actually survived? Imagine him sitting in the command chair. He is looking at the Earth rise. It is a blue marble in darkness. But his oxygen alarm is chirping softly. The Zvezda base is slowly losing pressure. A micrometeorite hit the external cooling array. The backup pumps are frozen in ice. He is 380,000 kilometers from any help. The radio only plays static and noise. Moscow is a world away from him. He is the king of a gray empire. But his kingdom is a titanium coffin. He checks his pistol on the desk. Is it better to suffocate or shoot? The life support system is clicking rhythmically. It sounds like a countdown to eternity. He starts to see hallucinations in shadows. Dead cosmonauts walking on the lunar dust. They are beckoning him to come outside. The lunar silence is a heavy weight. It crushes your soul before your lungs. He writes a final letter to Tanya. But there is no mail in space. He is a ghost before he dies. The red moon claimed its first citizen. A man of steel in a world of dust. Chapter 12. Recent declassified files suggest a darker truth. Some prototypes were never actually deactivated fully. Remote sensors still detect heat in Siberia. Deep underground, the Zvezda systems still breathe. They are waiting for a command signal. A signal from a country that died. The automated defense turrets are still powered. They track anything that moves near them. They protect a mission that was abandoned. The life support pumps are still cycling. Moving ancient, toxic chemicals through rusted pipes. This is the lingering Soviet ghost tech. It was designed to last for decades. It succeeded beyond anyone's wildest, darkest dreams. Some explorers say the air smells like ozone. They find vent pipes hidden in forests. If you listen closely, you hear it. The mechanical hum of the lunar dream. It is a siren song of steel. It calls to a future that vanished. The blueprints are gone, but the metal remains. It is a monument to pure ambition. And to the terror of absolute control. The Zvezda is not dead yet. It is just hibernating in the dark. Waiting for a reason to wake up. Chapter 13. Today, the moon remains a silent witness. The Zvezda blueprints are museum curiosities now. We look at the craters and wonder. Did they ever make it up there? Or is the horror buried under us? The Soviet lunar base was a dream. A dream built on a foundation of fear. It showed us the limit of machines. It showed us the price of secrets. The cold steel is still out there. The hum of radiation never truly fades. The stars are watching the lunar dust, waiting for the next empire to fall.